45 clap.
Oh, I forgot that we do that. It's weird how sometimes like a week feels like nothing, and sometimes it like completely destroys my memory of how this works. Yeah. Okay, I have time dead is open. I'm ready to clap.
Okay, 5 seconds.
Okay.
But yeah, that's because time is relative.
Your mom is your relative.
Starting an episode, keeping that in the episode, and starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to Chats, a television podcast, season 12, PeaksChatz. My name is Magellan, and the law will handle this. It's Alan.
I'm this, or what am I exactly in this metaphor?
I don't know. I hadn't really figured it out. It's about as empty me saying it as when Leland says it, so yeah.
I loved your delivery there, by the way. Hello and welcome to PeaksChatz.
My body was like twisted weirdly because I had to reach over to something, and I think that just brought out a particular mode of talking for some reason. I don't know.
I've never listened to whatever his show was called, but it gave me Garrison Keillor vibes. Prairie Home Companion. The Prairie Guy. Yeah, that's Garrison Keillor.
Okay. Speaking of Garrison Keillor, we've got a regular Garrison Keillor with us on this episode as a special guest. It's my sister, Gwen. No, wait. It's a longtime friend of the pod and Vanity Chats' own Oldasyouromens. Hey, Omens, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I was wondering if that either makes me Gwen or if that makes me the law. But I also highly appreciated the introduction to this podcast. That was smooth.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Smooth like the BTS song Butter. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, on this show that we do, PeaksChatz, we watch 2 episodes of Twin Peaks every week. And this time around, we watched Season 2, Episode 8, Drive with a Dead Girl, and Season 2, Episode 9, Arbitrary Law. First up is Drive with a Dead Girl, which was directed by Caleb Deschanel and written by Scott Frost. Any relation to Mark?
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark. It aired on November 17th, 1990. Alan, what happened in Drive with a Dead Girl?
I'm so glad you asked. In this episode, Donna and James wonder why Maddie left so suddenly. Norma's mother, Vivian, arrives with the news that she's married a new man, Ernie Niles. Meanwhile, Cooper tells Leland that they arrested Ben Horn for Laura's murder. Magellan, watching 2 episodes a week of the show, really can sometimes F up some of the A-plots in the order of how we're supposed to think about them. Because that's supposed to be the end game. You're like, wow, Ben really did kill Maddie. Sheesh, huh?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's talk about Vivian or whatever. So, Omens, we wanted to have you on because we just enjoy having you on, number one. Number two, it is my understanding that you are watching Twin Peaks for the first time. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. I am watching Twin Peaks for the first time, although I am in the interesting position of being one of the people who was in the fandom without even watching the show.
Right.
In the
which is
very beginning.
Fascinating. Yep. So I'd love to hear more about your own background with Twin Peaks, what you've watched so far. You were telling us before the show, and I think it's beautifully chaotic, the choices that you've made.
Okay.
So, yeah, give us some background on that and your experience going from like a Twin Peaks aware online person to, okay, now I've seen some of the show and yeah, what that's been like for you.
Yeah, for me, like I have mostly prior to like actual viewing. Okay, so first of all, I have seen all of season 1, and then like the first like 2 episodes of season 2 I watched pretty closely. 3 and 4 were kind of background noise, and then I skipped 5, 6, and 7 and watched 8 with y'all. And it is really chaotic, but most of the time I remember Twin Peaks, and particularly Twin Peaks analysis, in relation to the X-Files and what that show kind of takes and doesn't take and
interesting,
like plays with from that show, and how Fox Mulder is kind of like spooky Dale Cooper.
Right. What are some of those other, as someone who's new to the X-Files myself, what are some of the like big ideas of that comparison?
Okay, so essentially, like you remember there's this one Mark Frost directed episode called Kitsnigari. It's the one with the blue paint.
I have not. I don't think I've seen that one.
Okay, yeah,
I've only seen up to partway through season 2.
Okay, it's in season 5, and it's the visuals are, and the lighting and the way that episode is played is very, very Lynchian, very, very Twin Peaks, and takes a lot from Twin Peaks. Late season 2 episode, I think you might have actually gotten there already, but I'm not sure because I'm too broke to be a patron anymore.
Okay.
Have you gotten to Irresistible yet?
No.
Okay,
yet.
Irresistible to me is very Twin Peaks. It's about a like sort of supernatural version of like, say, Leland Palmer, and like if Leland Palmer were like actually a supernatural being, and Bob were not like if Bob were like a legit supernatural entity that existed outside of Twin Peaks and there were multiple of him.
Okay. Okay. If you want to hear me watch those episodes of The X-Files, come be a patron, folks listening, and wait a long time and I will get to them.
And that's the Chats, a television podcast promise.
Okay, cool. Great. Awesome. So that's what you're bringing into this episode. And what was your general feeling about Drive with a Dead Girl?
My main thing is like, okay, this one in particular reminded me of like extremely, extremely classic, like high school, something weird going on X-Files episode.
Okay.
And vibes immaculate, themes really, really terrible. And Leland Palmer, or is it Ben Horn? I forget who these men are because they all look the same.
Yeah.
Driving around with Maddie in the back of his car.
Yeah, Palmer.
Leland Palmer driving around with Maddie in the back of his car is a fear that like pierces deep into the soul.
Definitely. Alan, what about you? What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it kind of envisions a specific version of Twin Peaks where they had more time to just play around with like the viewer knowing about Leland. But it condensed it into one episode and squish in like all of this other stuff that just does not matter. And it's fascinating that this is squanched between like 2 of the strongest episodes, or the most interesting like plot episodes. Does it have good stuff? Absolutely. I think there's at least 1 to 2 good plot lines in this episode. But otherwise, it's even like as the season 2 lover here, I think that we're just getting set up for plot lines, and that's not always interesting. So like some of the Vivian stuff, I'm like, this might get interesting, but right now it's just, here's a mom. You guys meet this mom yet?
Check this mom out.
Yeah. Wow. Mars
yeah.
needs these.
Stupid. Stop it.
Dude.
There's this concept in
Tibetan Buddhism.
there's this concept in improv, which is sort of white people Tibetan Buddhism in a way.
Oh,
Roasted. Got him. If Dale Cooper was alive today, he would be in an improv class. Anyway,
I'm done. I'm done logging off. Good night.
Anyway, there's this concept in improv. Maybe it's borrowing from other storytelling, ideas or something, but called bridging, where you don't want to bridge in your stories, meaning you don't want to set up the event that's going to happen and then spend your story getting to the thing that people already know is going to happen, right? Because that's just boring. And it's like, especially in the improv context, a little like safe, because you're like, okay, cool. We know that we're going to go burn down the mill, for example. And now we're just going to spend the whole show talking about how we're going to burn down the mill, instead of just cutting to next scene, the mill's on fire. And now you have to figure out what happens next. And my issue with this episode is like, you could have ended Lonely Souls cutting to the end of this episode where they find Maddie wrapped in plastic, reminding you of the pilot, that whole thing. And you didn't need to have this episode if you just cut to that and then do the next one. This whole episode is bridging to the point where the characters that we're watching figure out Leland did it. And it's interesting what you said, Alan, about like imagining a different version of Twin Peaks where we know that Leland and Bob are, the same or whatever is going on there. And that would have been a different show if we knew this overtly prior to Maddie's murder, and we sort of had this dread of like seeing him interact with her and seeing him drive around and hold the golf club over Cooper's head and stuff. If we had some of this before she gets killed, that could have been really compelling and scary. It would have been made Lonely Souls different, because part of what's so powerful about Lonely Souls is you like are told that it's him and then he murders her right away. And it's like all condensed into this spooky, grisly sequence. But it doesn't work here where like he already did it. It just doesn't have the same effect as if, like what you're saying, Alan, if we were in this sort of alternate reality version of the Twin Peaks story where we sort of know this for sure prior to him killing again.
I mean, I actually didn't watch season 2, episode 7, but I know the sequence that you're talking about, because I have seen this episode like previously, like in like old times. I think I was like 11 or 12. And
wait, sorry, you saw this episode when you were 11 or 12?
I saw Lonely Souls when I was 11 or 12.
Oh,
what
God.
the fuck?
I'm
hearing
God.
every listener screaming right now if they weren't already. Please go on. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Or at least I saw the part that you're talking about when I was 11 or 12. That murder. I mean, I was watching Buffy by the time I was 11 or 12, so it was.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah. Anyway, the part of what I like about this episode is why I feel like they made this narrative choice, even if I might not necessarily agree with it and wish it was tighter, is we're seeing now the kind of insane joyride that Leland goes on that we didn't get to see with Laura. And we get to sort of see his unhingedness and his like laxity about this.
True.
That we didn't get to see before. Because back then he was just a grieving father, and now we know he's a murderer, and we get to see him relish in this.
That's a good point. We get to see him dance with his golf club in the lobby and all that stuff too, which is pretty fun and creepy. Yeah. And
golf, by the way, a potent metaphor.
Yeah, for what?
America.
Okay.
American excess. Golf is a colonialist sport. It's a sport where we say this land is ours and we use it to do this thing that we do, where we see who's stronger and who can be more precise. It's literally the colonialism sport. But Alan, what does that have to do with Twin Peaks? Well, it's bigger than I have time to talk about.
I think it is, for all the like conversations we can have about whether this was like the optimal narrative choice or like, and also I think to a certain extent the director and writer of this episode were saddled with like a post-it note that they had to turn into a story kind of like, hey, you just gotta do the episode in between this one and that one. But I do think they're trying to say something with the fact that we don't see Leland play golf until we know that he's a demon guy and he's bad. We don't see him in his drop top convertible until we know who he is and what he's done. And there's something there about like associating Bob and those evils. Like ultimately Bob is he just wants to like enjoy life in a very selfish way. He wants to indulge in these sort of like leisurely luxuries of being a part of the middle or upper class or whatever, along with all the murder and other stuff. But there's like a class commentary thing going on here that wasn't present to that much of an extent prior to this point, that suddenly is like crystal clear in a way that I was ultimately my favorite thing about this episode. Yeah. So that just to build on that golf as colonialism thing, it's also golf as like, as a marker of the upper class and associating the evils of Bob with that.
Yeah, I find it fascinating from a visual perspective that Bob is this sort of like represented in the mirror as this sort of like gross, frightening nightmare creature, and all he wants is to have the trappings of an upper class life.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, Bob can do whatever he wants, and he just wants to play 9 holes.
And the song that he's singing throughout the episode is Surrey with the Fringe on Top, which is also this like idolizing luxury song from Oklahoma. Like, I'm going to take you out in this really fancy, I don't know, what's a Surrey, a carriage or something like that. And it's partly, I guess, a joke of like he's in his convertible or whatever. But also, yeah, there is something there, Omens, about like Bob looks like a working class dude in part because they accidentally caught a teamster in the mirror, you know, like he was just like a guy working on set and Bob just has to look like the real guy. But also you can sort of think about him in terms of like Bob is costumed in a denim jacket and has messy hair, and on the outside Leland Palmer is in his suit and has his car and has his coiffed hair and is singing about, you know, the things that he wants and all that. I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Who's the bad guy from The Stand again? What's his name? Derek? Josh?
I don't know, but Bob does look like that guy.
Well, it's the same idea though. It's like the most evil thing in America is the average American. He looks like he wears the denim jacket and has the long hair, and that's Randall Flagg. We can't remember a single thing about The Stand, and we watched the whole show. It's just like, yeah, I think they are pulling from similar ideas though of the like blue collar American.
Well, and I think specifically it's like blue collar American fueled by this sort of the very consumerist, like, I want this, I take this, I have this, I revel in it, I dance, I drive my car, swerve around, you know, like that part of it, not just like blue collar America is evil, but like these sort of
it's
incentive
so Reagan-y
systems
and like early Bushy, sort of like the idea of like lower class people as like leeches or evil.
Mm-hmm.
And in Twin Peaks, at least, it's working class white people. But it's
Well,
just
Omens, the Twin Peaks is a leftist text because Ben Horne is a bad man and he's rich.
Leftist texts, yeah.
Not true. But it does. I do think that the show is dealing with this idea of like, what are the things you want? What are the ideals? What's this American like thing you were all desperately seeking for that will get at all costs? I mean, like,
and what is this? What is this sort of like? What is this? What is the American dream exactly? What is this idea that we have been fed, and does it actually matter?
Yeah, does Bob want that?
Yeah.
Is he just like, I want to play golf and to be able to kill and have sex with whoever and whatever I want as much as I want? Like, he just is raw id in a way. Not sympathetic, obviously, a truly evil, like fundamentally evil thing, but lying beneath the surface, like so much of the evil in this show and in the world.
And just to pull on the thread that Omens is pointing out there, of this show is commenting on, you know, the American dream. As we talked last week with our guest last week about Joel, the seat of evil in what happens in the show is the suburban house with the white picket fence and the two parents and the kid. And like, by all accounts, the realization of the American dream, and look what happens on the inside of that, or what could happen on the inside of that. And you know, what happens to a society where we like uphold that, and where it's possible for an FBI agent to like look a guy dead in the eyes when he has the girl that he murdered in his trunk in the same bag as his golf clubs, and he can say, let me show you my golf clubs, and he unzips the bag and pulls out the club, and like is so close to being discovered and is not assumed for a second because he's an upstanding member of the community or whatever. And he's like, he's amassed these markers of what it means to be a good guy and all this stuff. I mean, he straight up says like, oh man, yeah, Ben said something about a dairy maybe. And they're like, oh, a diary. Yeah, that sounds right. Like the fakest, guiltiest shit ever, and they don't suspect a thing because
he's Leland.
Because he's a lawyer, and he's got a wife, and he had a kid, and they have a nice house, and he's got a good car, and like he's wearing a suit, and he's a white guy. Like I think that's something that this episode is adding to the Twin Peaks conversation that's useful.
He literally holds a golf club up to Cooper's head and goes, let me show you these golf clubs. And there he's like, I got a goalie and I have another crime to solve. And it's like, I would never, if someone like held a golf club that high up and was like, check this out, I would immediately duck or run away or be suspicious, or all the above. That's truly twisted.
Mm-hmm. I have a clip just real quick of part of the interaction I thought was kind of funny.
Do you play golf, Agent Cooper?
Yes, Dylan, I enjoy its precision.
Like, Cooper can't help but be a complete nerd. I enjoy its precision.
Of course, Cooper has a thing for that. Omens, we've been talking about Cooper and his relationship to this whole Leland plotline, and I'm curious, again, as somebody who hasn't, like, watched the entire show and knows a lot of it from pop culture, what do you think of Dale Cooper so far as a character? Do you like him? Do you find him obnoxious at this point? Where are you at?
I like him, but mostly on like an archetypal level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see him as more than he is. And it's kind of difficult not to. When you're like faced with a show with this much cultural context and such a large and intense fandom surrounding it. People have been making theories about this show for 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very difficult for me to look at Dale Cooper and not see that this person that I've been friends with on Tumblr for 10 years has this one theory about him.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, that he is obvious, he exists in the minds of so many people, and that any opinion that I have about him is aggregate.
Wow. Well, all right, this is what happens when you get an anthropology major on your podcast, is you realize that all culture is aggregate. And now I'm having an existential crisis, but here we are. That's how we get to the natural endpoint of who drank Arnold Palmer. Is it's funny because it's an aggregate of so many different things. We were talking about the shirt. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. Just look up who drank Arnold Palmer. You'll get it. You're smart. You'll get it. Anyways, so back to the episode for a sec. I appreciate your opinion there, Omens. And your yeah.
But like, yeah, my opinion on Dale Cooper, like, I can't even like he's fine, but like I don't see him as a character.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he's an archetype.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a person.
Right.
I
It's
think
like Harry Potter at this point. Like, who even is Harry Potter?
Yeah, who textually is this protagonist? He just has power to do things.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to something fun, yeah? Let's talk about Lucy and Andy and Lucy's newly introduced sister, who I completely forgot about. Her name is Gwen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did anybody remember Gwen?
No.
I remembered Gwen.
Oh.
Mostly because I have seen her on. Or I don't remember Gwen, but I did recognize Gwen
From Gilmore Girls.
from Gilmore Girls.
Shit!
Yes. Hell yeah.
Wait, really? Kathleen Willowite. Is the
Yes,
actress's
she's a character's sister in Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Also, she's a professional sister.
name. I looked her up.
She reminded me like again, she fills a very Melissa Scully type role here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
As like a
She was
foil
like-
to the character you already know, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a foil to
Yeah.
the character you already know, but also kind of the interrogator of the situation.
Mm.
Like, this
Mhm.
might actually be a little bit strange,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be a little bit more careful kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Gwen on a level, like, understands that Lucy is, like, a little bit naive,
Mm.
shall we say,
Mhm.
to put it kindly. And, for her, like, I always think about, like, the way she sort of tears into Andy in her introductory scene. Like, what I love about Melissa Scully as a character, and she's only in the X-Files for, like, maybe 3 episodes,
Mhm.
but she's able to sort of, like, ground the situation back into reality. And that's what I love about Gwen as well.
Right.
Yeah, she's interesting. She reminds us that there is a world outside of Twin Peaks, and we don't get a ton of. We actually do start to get more of these little characters in season 2, where it's like, well, we know about like Andy and Lucy's whole thing, but like, what does an outsider think about this? And she's just kind of like, hey, Lucy, like, this is silly. And also the rest of the world doesn't think about things the way you guys do in your little idyllic town. It is so funny when she meets Hawk for the first time. John, please tell me you clipped any of this.
Of course. I've got it right here for
Yeah,
you.
that was hilarious.
It's a pleasure to meet you. God, how you must hate us white people after all we've done to you.
Some of my best friends are white people.
I howled, folks, at that scene. I literally went, ah! Because
Same.
you don't think every time people are like, oh, Hawk is a racist character or whatever, Michael Horse knows
Yeah.
what he's goddamn doing.
Mhm.
And you gotta trust the man because he knows how funny it is, how deeply, profoundly funny it is to have this random white girl be like, you must hate us. And for him to just drop the, I have white friends, some of my best friends are white. Incredible.
Yeah. Such a
Gwen
funny
manages
moment.
to say stuff like that, and I don't hate her. I'm not like, ugh, Gwen sucks. She's harmless. She's the kind of like average 30-something-year-old white woman that you're like, oh, whatever. I don't like, you don't occupy real estate in my brain that often.
Well, and
Yeah, she's very much a more grounded version of Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the one who is kind of maybe, well, she's obviously gotten out of Twin Peaks and seen the rest of the world and is kind of showing up. Well, okay, so if I'm going to make a really strange reference here.
Okay.
But Lucy is Blanche Dubois
Whoa.
and Gwen is Stella.
Huh.
Mhm.
Oh, from A Streetcar Named Desire.
From A Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh.
I've only ever seen A Streetcar Named Marge, the Simpsons episode about it.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar.
So essentially, Blanche Dubois is like this sort of like idyllic soap opera character who lives for magic and drama and just the aesthetic of it all.
Right.
And that's very Lucy. Like, Lucy's very airy-fairy. And Stella was the one that was forced to leave their big, rich country home, go to the city and, like, actually properly get married and settle down. And she's really grounded. But Lucy also, Blanche also kind of brings a refinement to Stella's life that, and an idealism that she doesn't have. And I find that similar dynamic in the Lucy-Gwen relationship. I mean, Gwen's really funny. Gwen is obviously Lucy's sister. They're obviously cut from the same cloth. But
They went to the same hairdresser, all that stuff.
they went
Same
to the same
bangs, same
hairdresser,
bangs.
obviously. But Lucy is like the more idealistic one, and definitely the like brighter one of the two, even though one is bleach blonde.
Doesn't she say that her future son is going to be a quote-unquote sperm gun? And then that's when they're like, shut up, Gwen. Literally. When Andy and Lucy tell you to shut up, you know you've done something wrong. You know you fucked up.
It was hilarious, though.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I enjoy a good light plot line. Like we talk about, ultimately I think I come down on Drive with a Dead Girl being like silly filler, but like sometimes you need a little bit of silly filler in your life. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's like the episode of, I can't think of anything with filler because I skip all the filler and everything I watch.
Really?
It's like
No.
it's like that one episode of Xena Warrior Princess where they get almost hung and Xena tries to have sex with the god of war.
What? God damn it! Adding Xena to the list. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'll watch it. Sure, why not?
I mean, it's campy nonsense.
Yeah, that sounds
to the
pretty
nth
delightful.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of thing that it would be really fun to watch together as a Patreon thing. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't do
Oh,
a
yeah.
main feed.
Oh yeah,
that would be like a come to the chat's Discord. We're gonna watch Xena. And we're gonna watch Frasier.
yeah, right. The last thing I want to say about the Andy, Lucy, Gwen plot here is, I really liked the way that this was shot. The moment where Andy walks in and he sees Lucy holding a baby, and the camera kind of like slowly approaches, and you get to really take in this moment where you know that your focus is being drawn to the baby.
Yep.
And you're kind of also out of the corner of your eye watching Lucy expectantly, maybe a little like happy to see Andy, curious what he's going to say, open to this, but she's slipping out of your field of view as Andy's getting tunnel vision and then passes out. Just the way that that's set up and the subtlety of the movements there made it so a funny moment, even funnier when he faints. And for a
Shot
moment
and
you're
chase.
like, does Andy think that one is Lucy's baby, or what's happening here?
It's a 2-year-old or whatever. It's like 1-year-old.
Does he think that it happened that fast? But yeah, another nice funny moment.
Yeah. We can briefly touch on. We have 2 plot lines left. So we got the introduction of everybody's favorite mom. It's Vivian Smythe, everyone. It's Vivian. No, this ain't no Aunt Viv. Whatever. Vivian's Norma's mom. Norma's annoyed because she hates her mom. Her mom is really picky about food for whatever reason and is picky about everything. Norma's like, why are you so mean about my life? And she's like, I have a rich Republican husband. And then freaking Hank is like, so you're going to steal from your wife? And he's like, no, I actually love my wife. And he's like, really? And it seems like it might be in question. Who the hell knows?
The thing that's such a bummer about Norma as a character is they like wrapped up or put on pause the 2 most interesting relationships in her life, with Ed and with Shelley. And now Norma just has to be in this diner with fucking Hank. sucks. This sucks. And then they're like, well, let's bring in a new character who also sucks. And this whole thing is boring. And the way they introduce it is she's like, oh, hey, mom. Cut to mom standing right here. No lead up, nothing. It's just like, oh, mom, you're here. I don't
is
like
now on
you.
the show.
Okay, cool. Great.
So every script writing class I've ever taken is like, don't
Don't do it that way.
don't do it like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the narrative decision? Like, why was the narrative decision to make Norma a lamp now? Like, why is she just existing to be there?
Right.
Like, she and Shelley had really interesting plot lines, and honestly, just pair her with any other character,
Yeah.
and you could get something awesome.
Right.
And she's just literally in this scene doing nothing. Every time I see Norma from season 1, I'm always thinking like, oh, there's going to be something good happening, because I like Norma as a character.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And now it's like she's just being wasted. She's just existing.
It's so frustrating.
It's really frustrating.
They ran out of stuff to do with Norma. It's sad. Ernie's cool, I guess.
No.
No.
But also, like, it just goes to show how much this show actually doesn't care about women.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, it says that it, like, Alan and I were talking a little bit earlier, like, almost like before y'all were starting the show, just as I was beginning to watch it, about whether David Lynch, really doesn't like the things that he's purporting to rail against,
Mhm.
and is instead using the women on this show for voyeuristic purposes. And this is one of
Right.
those episodes that kind of makes me think that that's the case. Because he's just treating all these female characters like dolls.
Yes.
And Audrey is also being treated like a doll.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about the ending scene to this episode yet.
Oh my god, I forgot. Oh, I forgot about that fucking scene. You're talking about when Audrey goes to Cooper's hotel room?
Yes, when Audrey goes to Cooper's room.
Oh my god.
And she's just there to be a sex object to tempt him.
Oh my god, and the fucking line. I'm sorry, but I'm genuinely pissed off at this line where she's like, by the way, when I was at One Eyed Jack's, like, I didn't let anybody touch me. Basically, like, hey,
God,
viewers, don't worry.
That made me want to fucking scream.
I still have my virginal purity. Like, fuck you. Fuck you. That was so frustrating.
And, like, honestly, when I see Audrey in these types of situations, I just want to be like, babe, you are more than this.
Yeah.
Please just, like, come out for a drink, like, hang out, like, we can talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to get into a relationship with a 32-year-old man.
Right.
You just don't.
This is
Right.
to push back a little bit, because I tried pushing back via messaging, and I wanted to like leave some of it for the pod. Problems that we have with the way women are portrayed in the show are often like they are due to the fact that it's being handed off between a bunch of different writers in a writer's room. Like we've literally received flack for saying like this is a Scott Frost or a Mark Frost and David Lynch show exclusively. They're not the only two writers. I mean, Scott Frost wrote this one. This episode has some of the worst treatment of women that I've seen on the show so far. We haven't talked about Ben and Jerry yet, but I want to very badly. And let's not forget that Scott Frost also was given the reins to write the autobiography of Dale Cooper. So like they have not just given him a couple episodes. He's Mark Frost's brother. I looked into that. And the dude just doesn't know. Like, it genuinely just feels like idle horniness sometimes. And ignores arcs that we've established and, like, concern that we're supposed to have for certain characters. And they're like, whatever. Audrey's hot. And it's like, no. Guys, you messed it up. She's 18. What are you doing? Stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can.
And making this murder the show is about a murder that is motivated by childhood sexual abuse.
Yes.
And recovering from trauma.
Mhm.
And treating every woman on this show like a sex object. Even at some points Nadine. Even at some points the frickin' log lady.
Yeah. I mean,
Like treating every woman on this show like a sex object or something to be
and the
used.
contemporaries of the girl who was killed and all this stuff happened with, right?
Yeah, and the contemporaries of the girl who was killed, because they treat Donna like a sex object or a doll too.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, give these women plot lines. Give these women agency. Like, how is treating a woman like a lamp any different than killing her? You're just fridging them anyway.
It's another way of fridging them. They're alive, but they're just there to motivate other people. Yeah, I mean, that's Josie, right? There's a part, I think, in this episode where, isn't it like Pete and somebody else?
And Harry, are talking
And
about
they're
Josie.
like,
They basically are like, whatever happened to Josie? Wait. And they have this moment where it's like the Spider-Man pointing at himself meme where they're like, wait, what'd she tell you? Cousin? That's Jonathan. He's like, no, he said he's Mr. Lee or whatever. And he's like, no. Uh-oh. Harry, I think the pretty lady is pulling a fast one on us all over again. Aw, jeez, Pete, that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Right. It's just
Can we talk about the dumbest scene in the whole episode just to bring us back, our spirits up a little bit?
But can we go back to this? Is the dumbest scene in the episode the dinner with Vivian and her new husband?
No, you can go back there, though. I want to talk about... But the dumbest scene is the Ben and Jerry stuff.
Oh, okay. I want to end on that because it's so stupid and... Oh, I know what you're talking about. Let's talk about...
Stupid, I barely
Let's talk
understood
about
it,
what you're
in
talking
fact.
about, actually.
Okay, so...
The worst thing.
Let
The
me
second
get us
worst
there.
thing after the Audrey thing.
Let me get us there. Ben and Jerry are eating ice cream together. No, Ben is in a holding cell. He tells Jerry to be his lawyer. Jerry is like, I'm a terrible lawyer. You should get someone else. It really feels like they're setting up the mystery of like who's going to be the lawyer. And it's Leland, you idiots. You're going to pick Leland. They go back and forth about like Jerry literally doesn't trust his own brother. That's kind of sad.
Can I play just a short clip of that?
Yeah.
I'm going to be handling your case personally, so let's get started. Did you kill her? Jerry.
Yeah.
For God's sake. Sorry.
Good.
So, they're going back and forth about that stuff. And then Mr. Tajimura comes in. Well, actually, before the Tajimura thing, we get the scene that I'm referring to as my personal vote for the dumbest scene in the whole episode. And it's kind of cute, but it's also so stupid. Ben and Jerry reminisce about the old times when things were simple. Later on, Ben talks to, I think it's Catherine, and she says, we've been at each other's throats for our whole adult lives. And it's like, damn, these guys never knew, like, pure happiness and, like, childhood bliss. But when Ben and Jerry are hanging out, they both flash back to a completely bizarre scene that has nothing to do with
fuck was
anything.
that?
Where they're like, I remember when Louise Dombrowski
so
danced in
confused.
front of us in our room when she was holding a flashlight and it was dark and we were 10. What?
I have no idea what's going on. But honestly, like the vibe was like early meme culture. Like that could have been like a reaction image in
bet.
like
Like
2014.
vaporwave almost. or
Like what kind of e-girl nonsense is that?
Oh, she's an e-girl. No, the meme would be that it's them going like, remember back when Louise danced for us? And then like it cuts to her and it's playing like Gangnam Style or something. Like you could put any song under Louise Dombrowski dancing. And it's like these two dorks that don't look anything like Ben and Jerry with glasses being like, wow, a curl. They don't say anything. They just smile in the dark. And that's the whole scene.
It's just like
I don't understand.
I don't understand the function of that moment. Like as a storytelling thing. It seems like it's entirely Omens, as you were saying. It's just the vibe. Like it's the vibe is there. There's a vibe happening. But like speaking of women being used as dolls, it's like this faceless woman with no context whatsoever. I don't know who she is or what their relationship is to her or what. I don't understand. The only faces we see are their faces lit up, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you trying to tell me about Ben and Jerry? That they're sweet, innocent boys? Because that's not what I'm getting from this. I'm getting that they're like really creepy and that all of the like horrible, creepy shit that they've done, all the sex trafficking that they have like spearheaded and orchestrated is like rooted in their unbridled horniness. I like what am I learning from this moment? I don't know. It was insane.
Like, this sort of like dramatic and like almost like it's a dance sequence, but it's almost like shadow puppetry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This like weird shadow puppetry sequence is meant to showcase childhood innocence, but just makes me think like light play and like
Mhm.
the fact that it made me think of like just procedural crime drama
Mhm.
and the like and the fact and like this what is meant to be a showcase of innocence just makes this man seem creepier,
Mhm.
like you were saying.
Right.
And it's utterly disgusting to me to think about how these 10-year-olds' exploitation of women started so early.
Right.
And I don't know if that counts as abuse, but the show treats it lightly.
Right.
And it shouldn't be taken as lightly as it is.
Yeah.
I just remember watching it and being like, wow, there's a lot to unpack there that you are not addressing.
Mhm.
Right. They literally just say, remember that? Yeah. Anyway.
Why did you film this? Why did you include? I'm baffled. And I think, Omens, you're pulling out an interesting point here, which is like, we are seeing that they've been like this since the beginning. They've always had a weird view of women that's skewed and doesn't center the person, but it centers like their body and all that stuff. You can really, really dig into it if you want to. It just feels like the show doesn't want you to. It's just like, nah, this is fun.
It feels like the show is saying, and isn't that nice? Like,
Yeah.
it's not even that they're not digging into it. But that's part of it. And they're also like presenting it in this completely like unproblematized way.
Mhm.
This simple, the beautiful music and the visuals and it feels like we suddenly jumped into like a heartwarming teen drama or something. And it's just like, yes, what a nice scene. But then you return to the context of the show and you're like, okay, but God, you know what show we're in, right, guys? You understand like the
and there are
implications
some
of all
bits
this.
to this show. I don't mean to interrupt you, Magellan.
No, go ahead.
But that seem a little bit like sitcom-y too.
Yeah.
Like the scenes between what's her face? Norma and her mother are also very sitcom-y. The dinner is very sitcom-y.
Mhm.
And it's like we are literally watching the show about a murder of a 16-year-old girl.
Mhm.
Right.
And all of the like sexual treatment of women on this show is honestly like just condoning and playing with the thing that you're trying to condemn. And the
Right.
sitcom elements add a lightness of tone that does not suit at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, Twin Peaks, where have you gone? The
And
toilet.
it doesn't help that sitcom stuff also is just really stupid. Can I just play a quick clip of
Yeah.
of Vivian, a line that Vivian says to Hank?
Prison treat you well?
Well, that's a long story.
You'll have to hear it over dinner tonight. I have a new husband.
That line jumped out at me as so dumb. I'd love to hear it over dinner tonight. I have a new husband. Thank you. Thanks for telling us. Thanks
Thank you.
for making this plot so surface level and random and arbitrary.
I have a new husband.
And then at
Same.
the dinner, it's Hank's like, yeah, I was in jail with you. I was in jail with you. I don't care. I don't want this, guys. You can do this in a different show.
Go
I'm
to the waiter
set.
and say, "Can I take
Yeah.
this back, please?"
I'm set.
I really don't want this, and honestly, I just wish this show had been allowed to end when it wanted to end.
Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately, yes.
Because, like, at the moment, we're kind of just tweedling around waiting for things to happen.
Yeah.
And it completely, like, upends the tone to the point where, like, literally a murder is committed last episode. And Leland drives around with Maddie in the trunk of his car.
Drive with a
Yeah.
dead girl.
Drive with a dead girl.
Oh.
And we have sitcom moments like that shit.
Right. Yeah, there are definitely times in Twin Peaks where like going between the tones like that works, and then there are times where it really does not work.
It works
like
against both halves of it.
Like there's power clashing, and then there's clashing, and this is clashing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say when season 2 gets even stupider, because they fully drop the dramatic stuff, the silly stuff works a lot better. Because like when the show is all silly, it's like, okay, great, I'm watching a sitcom. I'm watching a parody of soap operas.
Right. I don't have to care about anything. Or
yes,
yeah, right.
yes. So, the last
Alan, can we make sure that just to pull back the curtain, we recorded the spoiler zone of this particular episode already. There's something that we just have to remember to talk about with the Vivian stuff. That's stupid, but we'll talk about it some other time.
It's my
put a pin in that.
The last thing I want to talk about for this episode. Well, okay, there's a Mike plotline. Just so briefly, Mike escapes from the place. I thought it was funny. I was reading Magellan's notes. He was like, "Wait, why did he go to the falls and then get caught in 2 seconds?
Why did he do that? Why?
He didn't plan on getting caught.
He didn't get caught. Wait, what do you mean? When did he get caught?
He said, "I'm going to the falls," and then they caught him. They said, "Oh, he's at the falls," and they found him.
Oh, and brought him to the police station?
That's how I understood it.
I don't get it.
Nobody cares, Sean. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares, Sean.
I honestly have no idea where we're going to go from here or what even is going to go on, and part of me does not care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's valid. I mean, I think there's a reason that there's such a collective like consciousness around what episodes to not watch of the show, and it's because it just is a different show from this point forward. Like it has made the attempt to make a point about the Laura Palmer stuff. It, as Omens you've been saying, it has bungled that attempt in some important ways, and now we're just gonna go do other stuff for a while. And I think there's
it's
still
almost like the writers are bored with their own show. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I feel that for sure. And I think there's still stuff to enjoy in the rest of season 2, and I think folks should still watch it with us. But it's its own thing, and the skeletons are
part of it. Bingo.
But yeah, that's Drive with the Dead Girl. Any other thoughts that folks had about this episode before we wrap it up?
I just had to mention that there is some fun Catherine Ben stuff. I know we talked about it, but she pulls the curtain back. It's kind of fun because she says like, "Hey, it's me, Mr. Tajimura. Haha, racism. I love Yellowface." And he's like, "Oh no!" But he signs the mill away to her and the Ghostwood estate, and then he's gonna get released from prison in the next looks at watch 30 minutes.
Right.
Like in real time, it's like he just gave it to her. He signed the papers gladly while he like looks at her feet or whatever, and then Ben's not in prison anymore. But Tajimura, aka Catherine, has the Ghostwood estate. Good for her, honestly.
It did make my skin crawl in the right way. That the way that she reveals to him that it's her is like, "Hey, it's my foot that you used to kiss all the time," and he's like, "Oh my God, I know that foot."
I'm always doing that. I do that to all my friends whenever I am hiding things from them. I show them those tootsies. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It was the moment where Pete Martell comes in and is like, "I've got this recording of Catherine, like, screw you, buddy." And on the tape, she's like, "Remember when we had our love affair, Ben Horn?" And it's like, is Pete Martell cool with this?
Is he like, he seems fine.
He's like totally fine with all of this. I guess he just hates Ben Horn that much that he likes to see him squirm and suffer. Anyway,
so do I.
Interesting. But yeah. Well, Omens, thank you so much for coming on the show. We always love to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Where do you want to direct people to, and do you have a chatsum to share?
I have no place that I want
Beautiful.
people to direct.
Beautiful.
To find me on the internet. Well, if you want my internet stuff,
Yes.
find me on the chat's
Great.
Discord, and we will go from there.
Yes.
But the chatsum that I have for this week, I don't know if I've already shared it. Have I shared Story of Yanja Palace on this show
Doesn't
yet?
sound familiar to me.
I don't think.
Okay, Story of Yanja Palace, or Yanja Gongwe, is a ski drama set in the Qing Dynasty, so 18th century, 1741 to like 1766 specifically. And it follows a palace maid who rises up to become an imperial noble consort. And it's kind of like Chinese Game of Thrones, but based on actual history that maybe happened. And it's cool. It's really, really fun. I'm watching it with my mom for the second time. It's available on Amazon to buy. It's $24.99 for 80
That's a value
episodes
proposition. Well, awesome. Awesome.
I want to watch more sea dramas. I like it.
All right.
So yes, absolutely give it a shot.
What was I gonna say? Mine and Alan's chatsums you'll hear in part 2. So let's get over to that half of the episode. After a brief musical break, we will be back to discuss Arbitrary Law.
Welcome back to PeaksChatz. The second episode we watched this week was Season 2, Episode 9, Arbitrary Law. I'm still here with Magellan. Hi, Magellan.
Hey.
Hey. Arbitrary Law was directed by Tim Hunter. It was written by Mark Frost.
Wait, I want to say something here. When you pick the Bruce Lee character in Tekken for no reason, that's Arbitrary Law.
The Bruce Lee.
He's a Bruce Lee clone character.
I know. It just felt like a walk. That felt like a walk.
Yeah, well, it was.
A light hike. A healthy jog.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Arbitrary Law was directed by Tim Hunter. It was written by Mark Frost.
Wait. If you're in the woods.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead. I was going to do a Tim Hunter thing. Like he's a Tim Hunter.
If you're looking for Tim Heidecker in the woods, you're a Tim Hunter. Mark Frost, Harley Payne, Robert Engels. It aired December 1st, 1990. Magellan, tell me what happened in Arbitrary Law.
In this episode, Albert returns to examine Maddie. Cooper asks for 24 hours to finish his case. James and Donna reaffirm their love. And then don't. Then de-affirm
And then don't.
Andy accidentally leads Donna and Cooper back to Mrs. Tremont's house.
Can I read you the log lady for this one?
Yeah, let's dissect it.
One of the most incomprehensible ones. Well, maybe now that I've watched the episode, I'll disagree with myself. So now the sadness comes, the revelation.
Uh-huh.
There is a depression after an answer is given.
Yep.
It was almost fun not knowing. Yes, now we know. At least we know what we sought in the beginning. But there is still the question, why? And this question will go on and on until the final answer comes. And then the knowing is so full there is no room for questions. Oh, it's the reveal. All right.
Yeah, it's about the reveal.
It's sad. Things that we've been wanting to know since the beginning. I got it. All right. Thanks, Margaret. Watching this at the beginning really just feels like, okay, let me see if I can remember any of this. Nope. The second it ends, I forget all of it.
Right.
But the previous ones was pretty good. So that's why I was like, Anyways, Arbitrary Law, one of the most famous episodes of Twin Peaks. You know how we keep making references to like cars and technology and like acceleration and how the show is like blistering forward.
Yeah.
The brakes fell off this dang vehicle. We have no more ability to slow down. The NOS has been hit. We crashed into a wall, and the only thing behind it is looks at watch for like 15 episodes of show.
I pulled up this article yesterday that was Twin Peaks episodes ranked from worst to best. And
Where do they put Arbitrary Law?
let's just say that all of the worst ones are coming up.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
But we're still in good Twin Peaks, Magellan.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You hated Arbitrary Law. It was one of your least favorites. You were sick of this episode.
I think this has something that Joel, our guest from last time, said in, I think, the spoiler zone really stuck with me, and I was thinking about it throughout watching this episode.
What was that?
Basically, Fire Walk With Me, the movie, fixes stuff here so good that it makes this suck.
Yes.
And I don't know how much more I can say about that in this zone and not in the spoiler zone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard for me to watch this episode as if it's my first time watching it. Because Fire Walk With Me recontextualizes a lot of the like Leland Bob stuff in a way that is just better than this. I
agree. It feels like this is, because this is, again, a Tim Hunter directed, who wrote this episode. Frost, Payton, and Engels.
Yeah.
But not David Lynch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there is a clear divide here between what Lynch and what Frost and company think about Twin Peaks and what is the story they're trying to tell. In my opinion, Mark Frost is trying to tell a story about a man tragically possessed by an evil spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about what David Lynch thinks about that way down the line. We're gonna punt that because David Lynch is gonna have so little involvement with the show after this point that it's barely gonna resemble what it's been before.
Right. Until like the last episode of the season or something like that.
Correct. That last like 2 or 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're in this space, we're in the Frost zone, I call it, this chunk of Twin Peaks.
And I think it's a little unfair to pin like everything we don't like on Mark Frost.
I'm just saying this is an ideological difference between the two of them. I'm not even saying I don't like it. I just think that this is where they split.
I mean, this is certainly an episode that is like overly preoccupied with justifying everything. Like every little line that we've had before comes back and gets an answer. All the pieces come together, and that feels like a Mark Frost thing in the way that we talked about the finale of season 1, because the finale of season 1 was trying to do, I think, similar work. But we can't hold that desire to connect all the dots too much against what folks are doing in this episode, because it's a TV thing, right? Yes. Like that's just kind of the unfortunate realities of creating a TV show that you can't it takes a lot of, I think, I don't know, industry influence and like bravery and kind of bulletproofness to be able to do unusual things without explanation and let it sit, because there's so much pressure to like answer the questions and conclude the story and give people a reason to come back every week. And this episode throughout feels like it's being weighed on by those TV kind of like the show as a commodity pressures, or the show as a product rather pressures. And it sucks. And then, there's still like, I think, really well written lines. There's also lines that come across as written. They sound like somebody wrote them down. And there are lots of shots in this episode that look like somebody framed them.
Oh, God. Tim
Hunter was, I don't know, man. He was making some choices.
Absolutely. Tim Hunter, big in, 80s, 90s television. He actually worked on some Breaking Bad, Carnival, Chicago Hope, Homicide, Life on the Street, Mad Men, similar to like Leslie Linka Glatter, just one of those people. In my opinion, not as talented personally, because what makes a good director, similar to what makes a good editor, is like a subtle hand. And there are so many moments in this episode where the camera just goes, look at what you need to look at it, look directly at it. We're zooming in on Donna's mouth. And it's like, chill, Tim.
Oh my God,
I
that shot was
understand.
ridiculous. Yeah.
It got uncomfortable in a bad way.
There were like 4 moments where I was noticing. I'm sorry for starting the conversation off ragging Arbitrary Law. I think it's ultimately like got some really interesting and good stuff in it. I think I'm in one of those moods today. But anyway, Tim Hunter, listen, man, you're doing the Dutch angles, severe Dutch angles when the investigators are talking.
Dick Tremaine said, let's go Dutch.
You're doing this like super soft focus lighting thing. The next scene where James and Donna are hanging out. Then you go to the diner and you're doing these overly exaggerated high and low angles in the conversation between Norma and her mom that are like just don't make sense next to each other. Then you're doing the Donna's mouth zoom in moment. And there's lots of really cool stuff later in the episode, especially the bit with the sprinklers and like how all of that is shot, I think looks incredible. But there's a lot of moments where in the writing and the directing, you can feel them under the pressure of like, okay, guys, this has to be a good one. This has to be one of the good episodes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This one has to be important. This one was advertised as like, today's the day.
Right.
That you get the answers, similar to Lonely Souls. And it bums me out. I think that's a great place to start the discussion, though, because like this was always one of my favorite episodes of Twin Peaks, and that's mostly because of the ending of the last probably 15 minutes or so.
Definitely.
Because when you're watching this show for the first time and you desperately want answers, this episode is like a feast for you. It's like you want answers. Here's every answer you ever even thought about. Are you satisfied? Here's everything. An owl is gonna fly in your face like it's Animorphs. Everything happens at once, and then the episode is just over, and you're like just left befuddled at the end. But when you think about it, having like known all these things, it's like, oh my God, you guys didn't leave yourself any food on the table.
Yeah,
you dropped every single thing, and every spoiler we've ever talked about is just in this episode, and now it's like, well, of course this show falls apart because you blew every single load. Like, sorry, I mean, every possible one.
Right, and some of them are just like absurd. Like for me, the most annoying one, it was hard to pick, but I think the most annoying one was when Cooper goes to talk to Mike. There's this whole scene where Donna reads an entry from Laura's diary, which I have a clip of, but we can go back to it later. And a big moment in it is Laura Palmer saying, Bob is scared of this guy, Mike. Okay, we know Mike. Let's go talk to Mike. Cooper talks to Mike and he's like, Mike, buddy, you got to help me out. You got to remember your times with Bob. And Mike starts to describe those times with Bob. And he says,
Bob and I, when we were killing together, there was this perfect relationship. Appetite, satisfaction, a golden circle.
Golden circle. A ring. My ring. I gave my ring to the giant.
He is known to us here.
Then he's real.
As real as I. He can help you find Bob.
How?
You must ask him first.
Anyway, like, come on, a golden circle. And then Cooper's like, oh, my ring. Right. That's a golden circle. What? No, that doesn't make any sense.
The one that made me the most angry was the right outside of Leland's cell. He's like, all right, here's my dream. So what was... it's like he's talking to the... I actually kind of want to jump around here because I don't think that this episode benefits from a plot-by-plot discussion. Because everything's on the table. If you watched it, you know what happened. Leland is caught eventually after Cooper goes on a vision quest. A bunch of other things happen, and Bob escapes Leland's body, and Leland dies. That's the episode. But before they open the jail cell, Cooper is like quizzing Truman on his dream. He's like, Truman, what was the small person in my dream doing? He's like, dancing. Leland loved to dance. And it's like, shut up. Let me do that. Don't take that guessing away from me.
Yeah.
This episode is like, all right, you guys weren't paying attention to anything. We're just gonna give. It's like reading the answer sheet at the end of a
the
choose
mystery
your own
book
adventure
or something like that.
And it's
yeah,
like, okay,
right.
you didn't. Now I know the answer. Why am I happy to know it? I guess. Why am I watching the show? If what you wanted at Twin Peaks was answers, yeah, go watch Arbitrary Law. They tell you everything. It's an answer sheet episode.
And I think that's like ultimately, I can't think of a show that solves this problem particularly well. Like having a mystery show that avoids the annoying moment where it answers stuff and you're kind of like, okay, cool. Thanks for answering that. You know, it feels like an impossible problem to fix almost.
At least in this small frame of time.
Yeah.
Like if these reveals happen over the course of the rest of the season, I would be like, oh hell yeah, the Leland stuff, let's build it for a while. Like the stuff that happens in Drive with the Dead Girl, let's draw that out. But instead we're like, sheesh. All right, we got to get into the woods now, boys. Let's go. We got all the woods gang together. Characters just kind of like shuffle around to fit this narrative suddenly. And I'm like, all right, yeah. I mean, there's a funny moment. One of my favorite scenes in all of Twin Peaks is the scene in the Roadhouse where Cooper brings everybody together and he says, we're going to find the killer. That's in this episode, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's a great scene. It has the giant. It has him getting the ring back. And then you have Leo, Bobby, and whoever else just standing in there
for some reason. Yeah.
Because it's all the suspects. And it's the show going like, why did you think they were important? We're leaving them behind. Stop looking at that. And the show, they are like, wait, what the fuck? Why did he invite us here? We're not important at all. And it completely like sells out its own mystery there. Yeah. But it's such a fascinating scene. I love the tone of it. I love the mood of it. Yeah. This is the stuff I love about Twin Peaks. But also it's happening at the same time that I'm like, you don't know what your show is anymore.
I love the like overwhelming almost campiness of Cooper's introduction and speech to everybody where he says this.
In the pursuit of Laura's killer, I have employed Bureau guidelines, deductive technique, Tibetan method, instinct, and luck. But now I find myself in need of something new, which, for lack of a better word, we shall call magic.
It's like so dumb that it loops back around to being pretty good, actually.
We ran out of cool things for metaphors. We're just going to say that it's been magic. Like, waba! Yeah.
And then my favorite line in the whole show, that gum you like is going to come back in style.
Uh-huh.
An incredibly beautiful poetic line. And the show's like, the show's like, hey, you want to know what that line meant? It meant that there's going to be some gum and they're going to talk about the gum. And this is what it sounds like.
I know that gum. I used to chew it when I was a kid. That's my most favorite gum in the world.
That gum you like is going to come back in style.
That is a thing I've heard before. And Cooper's like, wait a minute.
I've heard that in my dream. And it's like, okay, I don't know. I mean, I get that the point is, I don't know, the mystical in the lore of the show that the giant / this guy can be a censor for Bob, and they know that Cooper's heard the line and they whatever. But like, guys, you can just have someone say in an episode that gum you like is going to come back in style, and you don't ever have to mention it again because that line fucking slaps. It's a great line.
It's evocative. It's interesting. It doesn't need to have symbolism behind it.
Yeah.
I think that's the core of where Arbitrary Law falls apart for me in some ways, is that it answers things that didn't need answers.
Right.
I think that the Leland Bob stuff is fascinating and heartbreaking, and like you said at the beginning, represents a really interesting choice of like how they want to portray their relationship and how it's been for the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
They're like drawing a line in the sand and saying, here's what it's always been. And it just, I mean, like,
and, you know, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I don't really have a concluding point there. It's just like they've made a choice here.
Yeah, I think ultimately what bugs me about the gum line is the gum line. That's funny. Is there's a difference between, you were talking about this frustrating moment where Cooper's like, and then Leland's hair turned white, just like the guy's Bob's hair is white. Oh my God. There's those kind of like solvable hints that the show is saying, hey, they were here, we set them up. And maybe it's frustrating for Cooper to just sort of like turn to camera and explain them to you. But as we were watching through a second time, we got value out of seeing those hints emerge. And like, that's good storytelling. Maybe they circled back to it in a kind of like lame way because they're like, we have to name the stuff and write the episode. But that works. But then something like that gum you like is going to come back in style is not hinting to anything necessarily, because we've never seen Leland like chew gum before, except for earlier in this episode. And then the sort of like realization moment is not something that we could have solved, because it just is, hey, this guy says the line again, right?
Closed door mystery.
I guess.
No, I
guess you're right. Yeah. That's true. Right. And then it's presented to us.
The gum line is a closed door. There are aspects of this reveal here that are open door. Obviously, the Leland stuff is an open door. We've been able to determine that. If you're paying attention, you could probably guess it. We've had listeners who haven't watched Twin Peaks before who are like, I think it's Leland. Good job. You're really smart. You were paying attention.
But it acts like the gum thing is an open door hint in this moment. Like, that's my issue with it, right?
Yeah.
Is in the red room when they say it, that's a closed door mystery moment. You can't really figure it out. When we were talking about it in the spoiler zone, we were able to talk about like to interpret it and like think about what it could mean. But ultimately, it was, we were doing interpretation there, as opposed to this moment where they're like, aha, and now we figured it out and we used this clue, and it wasn't a clue. It wasn't like a whodunit kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, so I think that's why it's a closed door thing that they're treating like an open door thing. And then they're treating all the open door stuff as like, okay, and here's the bullet pointed list of the stuff you should have figured out along the way.
Yeah, we're far past like Ben Horn being a suspect, even though that was like 3 episodes ago. That was definitely the main plot. And now it's like, oh, Ben, whatever. He's going to be eating peanuts in the corner while we take care of Leland.
So good. Him angrily eating peanuts is one of the best things in this episode.
Even as everybody else leaves, he's just like, I'm not done.
Yeah,
I'm still eating. I want to talk about some things that I enjoyed from this episode.
Yeah, sure.
It's positivity corner. First of all, just brief note, Andy repeating J and M Solitaire over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah,
top tier.
I have that and his interaction with Donna right here.
J me.
What did you say?
Nothing. Hello, Donna. Hello, James.
What did you say?
I said, hello, James.
It's French.
I know it is. Tell me.
Donna, what's
It's
the big
French.
J Solitaire.
You know Mrs. Tremont?
Anyway, then they do a bunch of plot stuff, and then he's like, it means I am a lonely soul.
Wow.
How is his pronunciation there?
I don't know how to pronounce A-M-E. I think it's M. I'm not sure. The rest of it is fine. J and M Solitaire. I think that's it. Mrs. Tremont, or as Donna suddenly decides, Mrs. Tremont. She's from the Northwest, I guess. This is a fascinating scene that there's a couple scenes in here that I really want us to keep in our heads as we move through season 2 and onward. Just like save them in the back of your brain. Mrs. Tremont is no longer located at the Tremont household. Neither is her grandson, Pierre. There is another Mrs. Tremont, I think, who's like a younger woman who's at the door. Donna's like, Agent Cooper and company, come with me. I'm going to show you this woman. She knew all about the line that was on Harold's suicide note. and she's waiting at the door, and they're trying to ask her, is somebody else in there? Is your grandmother in there? Is your mother in there? Whatever. She's like, I don't have kids, and my grandmother died 3 years ago. I don't know what you're talking about. There's a moment where it looks like she's talking to somebody behind the door almost. It's a little spooky, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think Twin Peaks does really well with the uncanny here, where it's like, wait, no. It's not just Donna being wrong. It's not just the magic of like something you knew was here is no longer here. It's something specifically uncanny about like, who is she talking to? Why is she here? And why does she sort of know about this, but not really? It almost sounds like she's lying about something. And I'm not like burying a lead here. I'm just saying that like that vibe of the uncanny is really important to Twin Peaks' like mythos and like themes. And I just like it a lot. But she's given a page from Laura's diary, which describes the Red Room dream in detail. And this is the part where it zooms way too close on Donna's lips as she just recounts the dream. And Cooper goes, old man, that was me. She whispered something. That was to me. Wait, there was a man dancing? I saw that.
Yeah.
And then we finally get to hear what Laura Palmer whispered into old Agent Cooper's ear. My father killed. Was it? My father killed me?
It's like, my father killed me or something like that. It's like kind of silly the way it's presented.
Yeah. Right. This big reveal, what was she whispering, is as simple as like, he did it.
Yeah.
I think I guessed in a spoiler zone. I was like, did she say Leland did it? And it's like, basically.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And, I think we're going to talk about some of this stuff in the spoiler zone, the Bob Leland stuff in more depth. But Bob being a paranormal creature textually makes it less interesting and transferable to real life, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that is what it is, because you can tell really compelling stories that involve like paranormal forces and paranormal creatures. I definitely had the feeling in this episode that I've had a lot of the time watching the X-Files, where there will be X-Files episodes where they try to present this interesting, like, oh, is it really a paranormal thing or is it not? And Mulder and Scully are talking about, oh, well, it could be this or it could be that. But then they'll show you a shot where the paranormal thing happens and it's just always textually paranormal. That's it. And I think what that really does that's unfortunate with the Laura story is that if we only ever thought about Bob from Laura Palmer's perspective, in her diary entry, she's talking about like, I want to tell the world who Bob is. Nobody's going to believe me. Seeing Bob from her perspective makes Bob out to be this sort of like disassociation that's happening for Laura, as she's going through this incredibly traumatic series of experiences, experiencing abuse, being abused by her father, right? And just the fact that like she cannot reconcile that in her brain, and so she creates this fictional alter ego. Oh, that's Bob, in the same way that Leland, when he was a kid, thought of Bob as like, oh, it's this guy. He was this guy next door, and like kind of separates or dissociates it from what's going on in his family stuff. And so, the Donna diary or the Laura's diary entry here, if the show just treated Bob as something that we know from her perspective, I think it would have been a lot more compelling. But instead, what ends up happening by the time we get to the Leland monologue at the end is we understand Laura's story as like she was locked in a struggle with a paranormal demon and she wouldn't let the demon possess her because she was too strong to be possessed.
And it went to her dad instead.
And it was in her dad, and the demon really wanted to possess her, and so she decided to die instead of be possessed by a demon. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Like, how do I walk away from this story, understanding something about that, as opposed to just knowing the beats of the plot?
Exactly. Well, yeah, I think that it also just portrays it as like, the spirit had to go to someone, and so Laura Palmer was like, I don't want to do it, and she chose to die, which in a way is reclaiming her death, but in a way is also like it almost makes it feel like she gave up, and her dad had to take on this burden instead. It's a very weird version of the Bob mythos that I just personally don't enjoy. And that's really what this episode like drills in. And you mentioned how like unrealistic that is, but this is the same episode where Leland has Donna come over and has this incredibly unsettling scene where he dances with her and tries to kill her.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that scene was really powerful and like functions in transferring this to like real world context. Like that was a scene where Donna went to the father of a friend of hers and he like touched her inappropriately and made her feel unsafe, and she clutched herself and cried and like had a reaction to it that was very difficult for her to process because it was like really disturbing. And that, I think that works. But it's also a demon man.
Donna's arc is I've said it before, it's about her realizing that maybe she knew, because she's in the scene and it's the fear of going, not only is like this weird and I think he's trying to kill me right now, but I'm realizing that maybe I've just known. Maybe I've always known this was going to happen, and I've also been suppressing it. And it sucks that we also shuffle off her character by literally the next moment is like her and James out in the boonies, and he's like, Donna, I'm leaving. This is all too fucked up. And she's like, James, what? That's not what a person does. And he's like, I'm never going to see you again. And she's like, James, no.
Doesn't matter. Don't you see? Nothing we do matters. Nothing's ever going to change. Doesn't matter if we're happy and the rest of the world goes to hell.
James, don't leave! James, don't leave me!
And off James goes on the greatest adventure Twin Peaks.
The best plot line you're ever going to see in this whole show.
Buckle up, folks. Here we go.
Put on your motorcycle helmet because we're going on a trip.
Yeah, get on your bikes and ride, as Freddie Mercury once said.
The only thing I had to say about that Roadhouse scene that we didn't already mention, besides how incredible the mood is one, I was excited to see Major Briggs again. I like the implication that Briggs has been hanging out with Cooper and company and we're not seeing it. Like, he's been around, and at the end of the episode, he's like, fellas, you guys did a great job. And it's like, wait, where were you? Wait.
Yeah.
But he's been around. And, best part of that is when Cooper leaves, he turns to the camera and gives this iconic thumbs up. I don't think we've actually seen this before, but this is a very memorable moment from Twin Peaks. And it feels like this is Cooper being like, I did it. I fulfilled my arc. Because later someone is, or I think early in the episode, Hawk is like, keep doing your vision quest. You're on the right path, mister. You're doing a great job. And it's like,
Albert has like that little speech to him at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's just like everybody realizes, okay, well.
And Hawk does too, actually. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, if it's not Ben and we all thought it was Ben, it's actually whatever you think it is, we're going to just allow you to go on your little quest and go. Good luck. We all wish you the best, and whatever spirit power is going to guide you there, I think it's going to work out, and it does. And he gives the thumbs up because he's awesome, and I love Cooper. So we get a big thumbs up. I also just love that. Wow, I really am already running towards the bottom of my notes. That's incredible. We did talk about Leland and Bob for like 30 minutes though, but there's a Dick Tremaine return in this episode that I found fascinating. So Dick is back because Andy has come into his power as a man and is ready to confront Dick. He says, I want you to come here. We're going to talk about Lucy's baby. Her sister Gwen is still around, whatever. Let's have a chat. And the three of them are there, and piece of crap, they're like sitting in there's a guy fixing the sprinkler while Lucy and Andy are talking about their sperm, and she's like, Dick, what about the sperm? And I get it, guys. It's very funny. The guy looking over like, dicks and sperm? Wait a minute, I'm just here to fix the sprinkler. But how perfectly Twin Peaks, and how funny it is that we go from that to Dick lighting the cigarette to the thing that brings the whole Leland Bob moment all together, which is that the sprinklers go off. It's like a symphony. We bring the dumbest comedy plot into the most serious tragic ending, and it all comes full. It's a golden circle.
Appetite and satisfaction. That's right.
Exactly. That's the best thing.
I agree that particular transition from the height of absurdity to one of the most, certainly at the time that I first watched this, one of the most like emotionally affecting moments of the show, visually and performance wise, from Kyle MacLachlan and Ray Wise especially. That's what you're watching Twin Peaks for, is the elasticity of the tone there.
Yeah, it bounces in a way that I like. I was trying to explain to my coworker why I like Twin Peaks today, which was arduous because I was like, like all those cool like small town murder mysteries, and she's like, yeah, I love true crime and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it is one of those. But
what if it was a magic crime though?
What if it wasn't true? But it also, maybe it isn't a magic. Like, let me have to think about that though. And it's like, and then she was gone for a lunch break at that point.
Welcome back.
But like Cooper reading Leland his like last rites or whatever, or saying his last rites to him, incredibly strong. And yeah, it's like ADR to hell because they have like sprinklers going off and it sounds kind of weird, but like good moments. Do you have any clips of that part?
No.
Damn. People should watch it. Look up the last like 10 minutes of this episode if you haven't seen it. But it's really great. And then Leland passes on because Bob smashes his head against the side of the prison door. It's pretty violent. We see like Leland's hair on the side of the door, which is kind of effed up and violent. Ugh. But then they kind of are like, okay, where do we pick up the pieces from here? And everybody just kind of like walks through the woods. I love the tone of this whole scene where it's like Harry and Albert and Cooper and Major Briggs and Cooper, when they're talking about like how could it have possibly been Leland. Earlier in the episode, Harry is like, he's just crazy, right? I refuse to believe that it's anything else. And Cooper's like, that's the sad thing, is it's not that. It's actually an evil demon man inside of him. Isn't that bad? Mm-hmm. And Truman's like, I don't know, Coop. Your mysticism is getting us somewhere, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And then here he says, Harry, is it easier to believe a man would rape and murder his own daughter? Is that any more comforting? Which there's the question, right? There's the thing you got to think about. One of the thesis statements of this arc of Twin Peaks. What is more comforting? What is the thing you wanted to see? If you were watching Twin Peaks for the first time and you figured out who the killer is it satisfying that it's Leland? Is it a nice reveal? They're like, oh, yay. Does that make you happy?
I mean, I think what's really fascinating in this moment is the way that Twin Peaks, in a sort of meta way, is disassociating from itself, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Lonely Souls, we directly confronted the grisly realities of this, of like Leland Palmer, the guy doing this. And then this episode is like, okay, but we can't live with that truth. As Cooper's saying, like, we just can't sit with that. So we're going to go with the demon possession thing because that just lets us live our lives. And, it's almost like, is Twin Peaks just a kind of like collective disassociation shared among all of its characters and us as the audience, kind of like the only way that we can really process these horrible things is to imagine that there's some kind of evil force that's doing it, instead of confronting the fact that like people do this sort of thing.
Maybe this is, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's like, it's an interesting, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it's even fair to call it like a failure on the show's part necessarily. It's just like I was saying before, you have to be a TV show and you have to go on and have something happen next week. And so you kind of, something unfortunate about television is like, it's a medium that is like designed to comfort people to a certain extent. People don't turn on the television set. People don't turn on the television set to challenge themselves necessarily. Sometimes they do, but I would imagine by and large, we do it to comfort ourselves. And so this is a moment where Twin Peaks as a television show cannot sit with these realities because the context that it exists in is a medium that is built to comfort us. And that's where, this is the last thing I'll say about Fire Walk With Me before the spoiler zone, but that's where a film like Fire Walk With Me is able to sit with this stuff much more directly, because a film does not necessarily feel the pressure to comfort. You sit with a film for a couple hours and then you're out of there. And a film can like scare the shit out of you and like make you sit with some horrible stuff because it doesn't have to ask you to tune in next time.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And here's my other kind of sort of concluding point about this, because this is like what we've been wanting to talk about for this podcast. The big reason we did it is because we've wanted to reconcile how we feel about the Bob and Leland stuff for so long. And some of this I might have mentioned in last episode's spoiler zone, but I know not everybody listened to that. But I think about the Bob magical stuff as like the way that some people think about government conspiracies. And Twin Peaks does dive into some of that stuff now and a little bit later, but like it's a lot easier to believe in like the Pizzagate theory, for example, than to just accept that like fundamentally a lot of people that are high up in government and low down are corrupt because that's just the way they are. And it's not part of a grander thing. It's not, you know, demons inside of like certain politicians or whatever. It's just some bad people made a couple of bad decisions and on purpose, and are going to continue doing them because it helps them and it profits them. And that's pretty sad. That's a pretty like bleak way to think about things, but I can sleep better thinking about like, well, maybe that's just real. Maybe we just have to accept that and like be our own people. And something I love about the back half of season 2 of Twin Peaks, warts and all, is it is characters being like, well, what do we do now? Like, what? And it's them answering that. I find that so fascinating. And like, I personally, and I think we here on the show, like, do come to the show to challenge us at least a little bit. It's my like Wednesday night relaxation show after work, but like I got all my neurons firing off. I'm trying to find books about it. We're booking guests. We're talking about it for hours at a time, because it's a show that also asks you to like think about your relationship to crime and good and evil and all of that stuff. And like I think the show ultimately lands on the side of like, yeah, you should think about this stuff. Yeah,
I think there's definitely stuff here that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of, and I've certainly like thought about the show to a level of depth that I certainly did not when we watched it the first time. So yeah, I'm glad that we did this and went through this. And I think it's also something we love on chats we were texting about this earlier, is to watch like things that are thoughtful and well-intentioned and that like kind of fail a little bit. And
tarnished
I think
masterpieces is what you're well-intentioned mediocrities.
Well-intentioned mediocrities are tarnished masterpieces. Yeah. And Twin Peaks is at least one of those, if not both.
At the same time, sometimes.
At the same time. And that's another thing that makes it really interesting to watch, is to watch people try to put things on TV that it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that you're putting this on TV. And then meet with, some setbacks and having to like backpedal or like reframe things or whatever. I think all of that textually and contextually is really interesting.
Agreed. And I hope that we can keep finding interesting things to say as the show goes on, and that it stays this good, or at least stays. At least we can continue
stays
to
this
have
interesting,
things to say.
Right?
Exactly. If you want, I don't want to. We're not teasing anything more. No more. There's going to be more challenging stuff to come. Believe me when I say that.
Yeah. Let's close her out and get into that spoiler zone after we do our plugs and stuff. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great to me.
Okay. First off, would you like to know what's happening next time? Next week on PeaksChatz, we're watching 2 episodes of Twin Peaks, episodes 10 and 11 of season 2. First off, episode 10, which is called Dispute Between Brothers. Leland is laid to rest, and Sarah Palmer tries to accept all that has happened to her family. Dr. Jacoby returns from Hawaii. Cooper
Yay!
Yay. Cooper prepares to leave Twin Peaks. Oh,
Aw.
Mayor Milford objects to his brother's engagement to a younger woman.
It's such a hard turn. Such a skirt.
They're just like, okay, we need a D plot. Somebody make up a mayor guy.
Mayor Milford was in the one episode where they were like, who's the lady, the log lady?
No way.
But now he gets a plot. Now he gets what he really deserved.
And then season 2, episode 11, Masked Ball, has every sentence in the summary is a spoiler for a stupid season 2 plot. So I'm not going to read them because I wouldn't want to spoil even that.
God forbid. God forbid.
But that's what's happening next time.
I'm excited. Thanks, John. Can you do the plug song this week?
Sure. So if you'd like to get in touch with the show, you have a couple of different options. You can email us, chatspod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/chatspod. You can also join a community of fellow listeners over on reddit.com/r/chatspod, where we are currently re-listening to or listening back to our season on Avatar The Last Airbender. On Avatar The Last Airbender. You can also join a community of fellow listeners on our Discord, which is a benefit for anybody who supports us on patreon.com/chatspod. What else do you get on the Patreon? Well, at $1 a month, you get some episodes of stuff, including my solo coverage of the X-Files called the Chats Files, which happens whenever I feel like it. And when I'm free to do so. At $3 a month, you get much more consistent bonus content thrice monthly, which could be movie commentaries, us piloting shows, or just talking about whatever we feel like. $5 a month gets you shouted out right here every episode. And those $5 patrons include such lovely people as Kat, Marcus, Nick, and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Fendon, Ryan, Six, and Stefan. Thank you, folks. And if you can't support us with Moolah, you can also support us by rating us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice, by sharing us with a friend, a coworker, or an enemy, whoever would listen. You can share the show. At the end of every episode, we like to share with you a recommendation for something that you can snack on, a la a Vlasic Snackum, between now and next time. We call those our chatsums. Alan, what's your chatsum for this week?
So I guess I have a re-chatsum of sorts.
Oh.
This is from all the way back in Roots Chat 7.
Oh.
I chatsummed a show on Apple TV Plus, which is the biggest hurdle you could possibly ask for to get someone to watch a streaming show. You say you need Apple TV Plus. But I spent the past week catching up on the second season of Ted Lasso, which is a sitcom on Apple TV Plus starring Jason Sudeikis as an American football coach who is sent to England to coach a soccer team, a local minor league soccer team. Not minor league, whatever. The leagues there are weird. And it's from the creator. It's Bill Lawrence, the creator of Scrubs, as the showrunner. I mentioned this before, but I need to recommend it again because it's just so dang good, folks. It's so warm. It really restores your hope in humanity and people's ability to listen and to empathize and to get over their difficulties. It's such a sweet show. It borders on saccharine, but to be honest with you, I think we need a little bit of saccharine in 2021. I think there's nothing wrong with a little bit of, like, for example, doing a Christmas episode in the middle of August because it's fun to do a Christmas episode where everybody gives each other gifts and says thank you. I think you could be really cynical in today's world and say that, like, Ted Lasso, feels manipulative with its emotions, but, like, it's sort of like, how I think about it, dude? When I was getting into improv and I told you I was worried about getting too into it, and you were like, what's going to happen? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like worried about getting too into it. And you were like, the worst thing that happens when you get into improv is you make friends and you get good at talking. And people like you more, which is not always true. But like, that's funny. Did I say that?
Sorry. Yeah. I just realized that I just did that. I completely separate from when you tell me things that I said. I don't even process it. It's like I said.
No, of course.
Sorry.
I say things and then immediately forget them. But
yeah,
it's similar where it's like, yeah, Ted Lasso is like really sappy, but like sometimes I just want that. It warms my heart. Really, really, really. I love it so much. Please check out Ted Lasso if you can. Again, Apple TV Plus. The only other show I even want to watch on there is that For All Mankind show where the Soviets got to space before the Americans did. Everything else irrelevant to me, and I'm sorry that the streaming landscape is the way it is, but check it. It's a good show. It's worth your time.
Cool.
What about you?
I had some chicken pad thai today. It was pretty good. So
I think that's also a rechatsum. Can you?
No, it's not. No way.
No.
I don't think I've chatsum pad thai. I think I've chatsum. Can you search it?
Yeah. No, you're good.
Okay.
I looked up chicken, I looked up pad, and I looked up Thai, and all three of those terms are not in the Chatsums document.
Nice. Can't believe I've never chatsumed the DDR Mario Mix dance pad.
You've definitely Chatsum DDR Mario Mix 3 times, 3 separate times.
I wish.
I had chicken pad Thai not the last time, but the most memorable time was right before the 2013 Boston Marathon. Aww.
Are you really gonna bring that up right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that up. That's my chicken pad Thai story. It was a weird day, guys.
Yikes.
I was in college. We don't need to get dark right now. Whatever. The rest of the day was really bad, but I had good chicken pad Thai. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe I'll cut this whole thing out. Who can say? Maybe I'll keep it.
I'm editing this out.
Shoot.
Oh no, you are.
Oh, it's staying in. It's staying in.
All right. Okay, folks, we are going to go to a musical break to end the episode, and then we'll do our spoiler talk.
Thank you so much for listening. Magellan, thank you for being the Agent Truman to my Agent Cooper. Again, one of them is not an agent. That's never going to be correct. And thanks for listening to PeaksChatz. Damn fine podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Spoiler Zone. This is the zone where Magellan talks about spoilers and I listen intently. No, I'm just kidding. We both talk.
So this is you're listening to this if you've seen seasons 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks and Fire Walk with Me, or you don't care if we talk about those things and spoil them. Okay?
Okay.
And I'm also in this spoiler zone going to be spoiling an ancillary piece of Twin Peaks media.
Oh.
And I will flag that when I do so. Hold on, I have to grab my book. Okay, so let's talk more about Leland Bob first.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that's so frustrating, and Joel pointed us to this idea last time, and I think it's exactly right, that this episode unequivocally exonerates Leland, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair reading to make?
He apologizes on the ground to Cooper. He says, "I'm so sorry this happened. I love my daughter. I can't believe I killed my daughter."
He says, "I killed my daughter. I didn't know. Forgive me."
It sucks.
It really sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no.
That's the least satisfying conclusion to this.
Yeah.
If Leland didn't do it and a spirit did it, then what does that tell us about the world that we live in? What do we leave this show thinking about? Is like, I hope a spirit doesn't take over me and make me kill my family members, because that would really suck, and I would be so traumatized by that. Like, okay, it won't happen to you. They're not real.
Yeah, and I think, when we were talking to Joel last time, he was asking this question of Lonely Souls, this incredibly pivotal episode is like, people are kind of mute on it in discussions of Twin Peaks. And I think a big reason for that is this moment here, where a lot of the visceral real life horror of watching Leland murder Maddie is taken out of that scene when you're like, but yeah, he didn't do it. It was the demon guy. He didn't even know what was going on. Bob says, in Leland's body, he says, where is it? Leland's a babe in the woods with a large hole where his conscience used to be. he even says like Leland is innocent of this stuff. I've totally like taken over his brain and messed with his perception of reality or whatever. And, you know, if you really want to force a reading on this, you can think about this moment as like exemplifying the extent to which horrible men specifically, but people who do bad things in general, separate the bad things they do from their self-image as like, but I'm a good guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was present in the cinematography of Maddie's murder, where it's cutting back and forth between Leland like crying and hugging her or whatever, and Bob kissing her all over the face to sort of, and I didn't say this when we talked to Joel, but like the Bob stuff is under a spotlight to kind of communicate like, this is what you should focus on. This is what's happening, I think, is what that means. And the outer Leland is like the story that Leland tells himself, right? Or it's like, I'm really sad that she's dead. I'm so sad that Laura's gone or whatever. And you could have that reading, and then Leland sort of confessing and apologizing here is a failure of him to take accountability for the things that he did and the ways that he sort of like was a part of what Bob was doing or allowed Bob to do what he was doing or whatever. But like, it's kind of generous. I think. I don't know. And then the other thing that bugs me is I always thought that the cycle of abuse reading of like, this happened to Leland when he was a kid and now he's doing it to Laura. I always thought that was subtextual. It's not. He's just like, I was a boy. He came inside of me when I was a boy and made me do terrible things, and Laura wouldn't let him do it. And it's like, oh, okay. So never mind. This wasn't a subtle thing. This was like, they explained this outright.
That's why this episode is frustrating.
Yeah. Right. Because I think what works there is when you have to reckon with, when you leave this like not knowing the answer to the question of why did Leland do it. It goes back to the Log Lady intro of like, that's where we go from here is, okay, we know that he did it, but like, why? Mm-hmm. Why would someone do that? And that, I think, is the question that you want the audience to walk away with to a certain extent from Twin Peaks is this horrible, horrible thing happened. It happens to people in real life too. Why? And you can bring in the stuff about, okay, well, it happened to him when he was a kid. You can bring in stuff about like, okay, the structural realities of society and what it enables men to do, and look at what Ben Horn is doing all over the place, what he's incentivized to do and capable of doing with his money when there's no demon inside of him. Like, there's plenty of answers that you can provide to that question of why would Leland do it. And also maybe he just like is an amoral person or whatever. But the episode is like, but there's a demon man. And that's why. That's really why. So anyway.
I love thinking about this stuff, but you basically have nailed all the things that I want to say. So
sorry.
No, it's good. You're saying the thoughts.
Do you want to speak to like why Fire Walk with Me does this better?
Yeah, well, first of all, it gives us Laura's perspective, which makes this whole like Laura told me in her diary that she decided to die. She took that choice, and it's like, okay, cool. I never really got to know Laura, and Firewalk with Me is like, let's get you to know Laura. Let's actually let's answer that. Let's zoom in on that character for once, and not just show all these different points. She's no longer a picture on the wall.
Right.
I think in like prepping for Firewalk with Me, I've decided I don't mean to mention this to you on pod. I think we need to have a woman on that episode. On that discussion.
Sure.
We can talk about who to get on for that, but like, it just. You need a different perspective to make the Laura narrative finally make sense, and to make Sheryl Lee's performance feel like it is complete, and she's not just somebody who has gotten to die in this show twice. She's died. She's been killed and wrapped in plastic twice.
Yeah.
You know, as Laura and as Maddie, and it's like, let's give her some interiority. Let's give her a thought on this, and also like you were saying, there's like a moment in Drive with a Dead Girl, right, where Leland is pulled over on the car, and that part is almost scary. And I think that like moments in cars with Leland get way scarier in Fire Walk with Me too, because it toes the line in Drive with a Dead Girl, but in Fire Walk with Me, it's like no, like he's a nightmare person and he's behind the wheel. Like yeah, it's a little scary. He's like driving erratically because he's possessed, but like. What else has this guy done? What is he thinking about? What's he got going on? All that stuff is answered in that movie, which I like a lot.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to talk about spoiler wise, and what I'm about to say spoils this ancillary piece of Twin Peaks media called...
You sound like you were auto-tuned right there.
Called The Autobiography of FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper, My Life, My Tapes. Okay. So here's a clip from the episode. Bob is talking through Leland and says this.
Oh, yeah. I suppose you want to ask him some questions, huh?
Did you kill Laura Palmer?
That's a yes.
How about Madeline Ferguson?
What do you think?
I'm asking you.
Well, what do you think?
That's the question.
Oh, gosh, gee whiz. I guess I kinda sorta did. I have this thing for knives.
Just like what happened to you in Pittsburgh that time. Huh, Cooper?
Okay, so first of all...
Sorry.
First of all, Ray Wise, fucking incredible.
Wow. He sounds like... I watch interviews with Frank Silva. He like gets to a Frank Silva impression in there. It's impressive.
Yes, yeah. He's so good. And he plays Leland across this show. Ray Wise plays Leland like 10 different ways, and it all makes sense, and it's all so good. Even when the story is dumb, and it's like, it sucks that this is a demon man, but it totally slaps that Ray Wise is playing a demon man.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he says that thing to Bob says the thing to Cooper about like, oh, a thing for knives, just like in Pittsburgh. I have this quote here from Full of Secrets, Critical Approaches to Twin Peaks, edited by David Lavery. And David Lavery writes an introductory essay to this collection of critical essays called Introduction, Twin Peaks' Interpretive Community. It's a really interesting essay. But he has this bit about the autobiography of Dale Cooper where he says, in his autobiography, Dale Cooper reveals himself to be through and through an unreliable narrator, obsessive, anal compulsive, deluded, immune to irony, not very perceptive about himself. Read after the series' final revelation that Bob inhabits Cooper after his failed test in the Black Lodge, the book appears to be pointing, as did The Secret of Laura Palmer, which contains all we need to know of the Palmer family's dark secrets and of Laura's murder, to not yet explored plot developments, to events in which we might have learned, if the series had continued, that Bob had opened Cooper in his youth and come inside just as he had done with Leland Palmer, and that the special agent killed Caroline Earle.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting, right?
So Bob, according to this theory, would have possessed Cooper in the past and led to him killing. But then that just leans more into the possession stuff. Like, Cooper's a flawed person.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's like the lore stuff that's annoying. But I think what's interesting to me about that is the idea that the show was moving in a direction of saying like Agent Cooper is not above this stuff, right? He's not incorruptible. Like he has been corrupted to a certain extent, and all of the little like, you know, rituals that he does and the ways that he has like controlled bursts of appetite satisfaction, as Mike says, like, let me take my bite of pie. Okay, I'm done for the day. You know, all of that is kind of like him containing or managing these sort of darker tendencies, maybe this like dark past. He killed this woman or something. I don't know. Like, to me, that's like kind of an interesting direction that the show could have gone in that it didn't, as far as I'm aware. I don't think any of that stuff comes up in The Return unless I'm wrong.
I can't tell you.
Right. But anyway.
The one spoiler thing I had was that it's really dumb. Again, like, knowing the answers makes the show dumber. I know that's not the show's fault, that we have the benefit of hindsight. but they're like, where could Bob be? And then we get like a first-person camera shot at the end of this episode of like. Also, we didn't talk about Albert saying maybe that's all Bob is, the evil that men do. Whatever. It's what we've been talking about. That's in line. Yeah. It's like a camera running through the woods. It's like Bob's going to the Black Lodge, guys. Like the Black Lodge is the epicenter of like Twin Peaks lore.
Yeah.
We're just gonna we're going there next, and I'm excited for it personally.
Yeah.
I want to live in the Black Lodge.
Me too.
Cool. Well, thank you, Magellan.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Coffee.